The sun dipped low in the horizon, casting a golden hue over the lush landscape of Umuofia. Nneka moved swiftly through the thick forest, her heart racing with excitement. She knew every tree and path in this forest, having walked them many times to meet the one who held her heart, Obinna. As she approached the riverbank, the familiar sound of the flowing water filled her with a sense of peace. There, standing tall and strong, was Obinna, his silhouette outlined by the fading light. He wore the traditional attire of a warrior, his chest bare, with a leopard skin wrapper tied around his waist. His spear rested against a tree, symbolizing his readiness to defend both his love and his land. "Nneka," Obinna called softly as she approached, his voice filled with warmth and longing. "Obinna," she replied, her smile lighting up her face as she wrapped her arms around him. They stood there, holding each other close, as if the world outside their embrace did not exist. Their love was forbidden, born out of a bond that defied the ancient feud between their villages, Umuofia and Amegbo. They had met by chance at a village festival, where Obinna's bravery had caught Nneka's eye. Since that day, they had stolen moments like this, hidden away from the eyes of those who would tear them apart. "Tomorrow, my parents will announce my betrothal to Nnamdi," Nneka said, her voice trembling with fear and sorrow. "I cannot marry him, Obinna. My heart belongs to you." Obinna's grip tightened around her. "We will find a way, Nneka. I will not let them take you from me." The sound of drums echoed in the distance, signaling the approach of evening. Their time together was slipping away. Nneka looked into Obinna's eyes, searching for the strength she needed to face what was to come. "I wish we could stay like this forever," she whispered. "We will, Nneka. In this life or the next, I will always find you," Obinna promised, kissing her forehead gently. As they parted, Nneka knew their love was a fragile flame, easily extinguished by the winds of tradition and duty, but she clung to the hope that their love could overcome the impossible. The next morning, the air in Umuofia was thick with anticipation. The village elders had gathered in the sacred shrine, a place where the spirits of the ancestors spoke through Ezemuo, the revered oracle. The shrine was a dimly lit cavern adorned with wooden masks, carvings of ancient deities, and the ever-present scent of burning incense. In the center, the oracle sat cross-legged, his face painted with white chalk, his eyes closed in deep concentration. Nneka's father, Chief Okiki, stood before the oracle, his heart heavy with the burden of his daughter's future. The elders flanked him, their expressions somber. The matter of Nneka's marriage was of great importance, not just to his family, but to the entire village. "Eze Muo," Chief Okiki began, his voice low and respectful. "We seek your wisdom regarding the union of my daughter Nneka and Nnamdi. May the ancestors guide us." The oracle opened his eyes slowly, the weight of centuries of knowledge reflected in his gaze. He reached for the cowrie shells and tossed them onto the sacred mat. As the shells clattered, a hush fell over the shrine. The oracle studied the pattern they formed, his face growing graver with each passing moment. "The ancestors speak," he intoned, his voice echoing through the cavern. "This union is blessed, yet there is a shadow that threatens to consume it." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Chief Okiki's heart skipped a beat. "What shadow do you speak of, Ezemuo?" he asked. The oracle's gaze bore into Chief Okiki's. "Your daughter's heart is not with Nnamdi. She is bound to another, a man from the village of Amegbo. The spirits warn that if this union is pursued, calamity will befall both villages. The ancient feud between Umuofia and Amegbo will be reignited, and blood will flow." A murmur of shock rippled through the elders. Chief Okiki's face paled. He had known of Nneka's reluctance, but never had he imagined it was due to a love for a man from Amegbo. "The ancestors demand that this love be sacrificed for the greater good," the oracle continued, his tone final. "If not, both villages will suffer greatly." Chief Okiki nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of the oracle's words. I understand, Izimuo. We will ensure that Nneka marries Nnamdi, as the ancestors wish. But as he left the shrine, a seed of doubt was planted in his heart. He knew Nneka well. Her spirit was strong and her love for Obinna even stronger. Would she accept the will of the ancestors, or would she defy it, risking everything?
Night had fallen over Umuofia, and with it, a sense of dread that clung to the air like mist. Nneka moved through the shadows, her heart pounding in her chest. She had made her decision. She could not marry Nnamdi. Her love for Obinna was too powerful, too consuming. Tonight they would flee, leaving behind the chains of tradition and the threat of the oracle's prophecy. She reached the edge of the forest, where Obinna was waiting. He was dressed for the journey, his warrior's attire replaced with a simple wrapper and sandals. His face was set with determination, but his eyes softened when he saw Nneka. "Are you ready, my love?" he asked, taking her hand. Nneka nodded, her resolve firm. "Yes, Obinna. Let us leave this place and find a life where we can be together, free from the expectations of others." They began their journey under the cover of darkness, the dense forest offering them protection. The sounds of the night, crickets, owls, and the rustling of leaves, were their only companions. Every step took them further from Umuofia, further from the lives they had known. But as they reached the heart of the forest, a sudden noise stopped them in their tracks. Nneka's breath caught in her throat as figures emerged from the trees. Nnamdi and his men, armed and ready. "Nneka!" Nnamdi's voice rang out, filled with anger and betrayal. "Did you think you could escape me? Did you think you could betray our people, our ancestors, for this enemy?" Nneka stepped forward, her fear replaced by defiance. "I love him, Nnamdi. I cannot marry you. My heart belongs to Obinna." Nnamdi's face twisted with rage. "You will return to Umuofia, Nneka. And as for this traitor," he spat, glaring at Obinna, "he will be punished for his treachery." Before Nneka could react, Nnamdi's men seized Obinna, binding his hands with rope. Nneka screamed, trying to fight them off, but Nnamdi grabbed her, forcing her to the ground. "You have brought this upon yourself, Nneka," Nnamdi hissed. "You have defied the ancestors, and now you will suffer the consequences." As Obinna was dragged away, Nneka's heart shattered. The dream of a life together, free from the constraints of their villages, was torn apart in an instant. She was left alone in the forest, her tears mixing with the earth beneath her, as the weight of her choices crushed her spirit. The village of Umuofia was a place of silence and tension the next morning. The news of Nneka's attempted escape with Obinna had spread like wildfire, igniting a storm of gossip and judgment. Nneka was dragged back to the village, her clothes torn and dirtied, her spirit broken. She was forced to stand in the center of the village square, her head bowed in shame as the villagers gathered to witness her public disgrace. Chief Okeki stood with the elders, his face a mask of sorrow and disappointment. He had hoped Nneka would accept the oracle's warning, that she would honor the traditions that had guided their people for generations. But now her defiance had brought dishonor to their family and put the entire village at risk. "Obinna will be punished for his crimes against Umuofia," Nnamdi declared, his voice cold and commanding. "He will be imprisoned and face the judgment of the ancestors." Nneka looked up, her eyes red from tears, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Please, Father, I beg you, do not harm him. Our love, it is not a crime." Chief Okeki's heart ached at his daughter's plea, but he knew the path she had chosen was one of destruction. "Nneka," he said softly, "you have broken the sacred bond between our families. You have defied the will of the ancestors. There must be consequences." The elders murmured in agreement, their expressions stern and unforgiving. "We must protect the village," one elder said. "The oracle's warning cannot be ignored." Nneka's knees buckled, and she fell to the ground sobbing. "I only wanted to follow my heart," she cried. "I only wanted to be with the one I love." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Nnamdi's men dragged Obinna to the center of the square, his hands bound, his face bruised but still defiant. He looked at Nneka, and in that moment, their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. They had chosen love over duty, and now they would pay the price. The village square was filled with tension as the elders prepared to deliver their judgment. Nami stood beside them, his face twisted with a mixture of triumph and bitterness. He had won, but at what cost? Chief Okeki raised his hand for silence. The ancestors have spoken through the oracle, he declared. Obinna will be imprisoned, and Nneka will be confined to her family's compound until further notice. The marriage to Nnamdi will proceed as planned, to restore balance and honor to our village. Nneka's heart sank as she realized the full extent of her fate. Her dreams of a life with Obinna were crushed, replaced by a future of confinement and a loveless marriage. As the villagers began to disperse, she was left alone in the square, her tears falling like rain, her spirit shattered by the weight of tradition and duty. The days that followed were a blur of sorrow and despair for Nneka. Confined to her family's compound, she was watched over by her mother and the women of the village, their eyes filled with pity, but also a sense of duty to enforce her punishment. The marriage to Nnamdi was fast approaching, and with each passing day, Nneka's heart grew heavier, burdened by the knowledge that Obinna remained imprisoned, his fate sealed by the oracle's prophecy. But the prophecy was not yet fully realized. On the day of the wedding, dark clouds gathered over Umuofia, casting an ominous shadow over the village. The air was thick with the scent of rain, and the villagers whispered among themselves, fearful of what the day would bring. Nneka, dressed in the finest traditional wedding attire, an intricately woven wrapper, a coral bead necklace, and a headpiece adorned with feathers, felt none of the joy or anticipation that should have accompanied such an occasion. Instead, her heart was filled with dread. As she was led to the village square, where the ceremony would take place, the first drops of rain began to fall. The elders and villagers had gathered, their faces tense and expectant. Nnamdi stood at the altar, his expression hard and determined. But as Nneka approached, a sudden gust of wind swept through the square, knocking over one of the sacred idols that had been placed to bless the union. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. It was a sign, an ill omen that could not be ignored. Before anyone could react, a loud crack of thunder echoed across the sky, followed by a blinding flash of lightning. The villagers screamed in terror as the heavens seemed to open up, unleashing a torrential downpour that quickly turned the ground to mud. In the chaos, Nneka's eyes were drawn to the prison where Obinna was held. She knew without a doubt that the prophecy was coming true. Suddenly, a group of warriors from Amegbo stormed into the village, their faces filled with rage and vengeance. They had heard of Obinna's imprisonment and had come to rescue their own, igniting the ancient feud that the oracle had warned about. The village erupted into chaos as the two sides clashed, fighting with spears and machetes, their anger fueled by generations of hatred. Nneka's heart pounded as she watched in horror, knowing that this bloodshed was the result of her and Obinna's love, a love that had defied tradition and brought ruin to both their villages. She tried to reach Obinna, but the crowd was too thick, the fighting too intense. Amidst the chaos, Obinna managed to break free from his captors. He fought his way through the melee, his eyes fixed on Nneka. But as he reached her, a spear flew through the air, striking him in the chest. Nneka screamed as Obinna collapsed into her arms, his blood staining her wedding attire. "Nneka," Obinna whispered, his voice weak. "I'm sorry. I couldn't save you." Tears streamed down Nneka's face as she held him close, her heart breaking into a million pieces. "No, Obinna, you are my heart, my soul. I would rather die with you than live without you." As the rain continued to pour, washing away the blood and tears, Nneka and Obinna's tragic love story came to an end. The prophecy had been fulfilled, and the cost was more than anyone could bear. The villagers, realizing the magnitude of what had transpired, began to mourn, their cries of sorrow echoing through the now devastated village. In the days that followed, both Umuofia and Amegbo were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. The feud had been reignited, and the scars would run deep for generations. But amidst the ruins, the graves of Nneka and Obinna stood as a haunting reminder of the price of defying the will of the ancestors. Their love, though doomed, would be remembered for all time, a tale of passion, tragedy, and the unyielding power of tradition.